All right, hi everybody. I'm doing this by myself today. All right, so we the last section that we did was on the Montgomery bus boycott. We're talking about Rosa Parks and how the bus boycott expanded. Initially, the boycott was supposed to just be one day, but it expands out to be more than a year, and the entire city of Montgomery gets involved. From this point forward, we're moving on. The civil rights movement is going to expand across the South. Um, this is where we're going to start talking about the rise of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, probably the single most famous person of the entire movement. Everyone in the US knows about him, of course. But he's going to rise up. He's talking about nonviolence. He's talking about peaceful demonstrations. Uh, and he's going to start organizing himself. Okay, what I need you and your make the next big letter. The next big number is the SCLC. It's the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference is Martin Luther King's primary organization. So what it is a collection of reverends from around the South. And one of the things about the civil rights movement that's really important to understand is that the civil rights movement is largely dominated by Christian churches leadership, these black churches, right? That these church leaderships are just dominating the southern organization. In the north, the movement is largely dominated by like labor unions and groups like that. In the south, it's largely dominated by religious leaders. So we have our whole list of all these religious leaders. This is not the full list. The list is like 60 or 70 different ones, but they're all like leaders from different cities around. And what's going to happening is um, that all of these people are going to go home and they're going to start different movements in their homes. Okay, the Montgomery bus boycott works so well that when Charles Kenzie Steele returns to Tallahassee, he does a Tallahassee bus boycott, right? And Joseph Lowery does a Mobile bus boycott, right? They're going to start doing bus boycotts in all of these cities, city by city by city. The other organization that gets started right off the bat, the other organization that gets started is the SNCC. It's founded by this woman here named Ella Baker. Go ahead and make this another number. Ella Baker is she's one of the leaders. She's one of the members of the SCLC, right? So the SCLC is the Southern Christian Leadership one. That's where it's all the reverends. Ella Baker was working in there, but because she's a woman, she's not a preacher. She was like made their secretary, basically, right? She didn't like being the secretary, so she left and formed her own union, her own group called the SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. This is Ella Baker's group. It focuses on students. So this is high school students and college students. And they largely do peaceful demonstrations in the form of what we call a sit-in. And a sit-in, so in your notes, you have the next big number is the SNCC, and then you have sit-ins. So the sit-ins are basically where you have segregated lunch counters or segregated restaurants, and you'll just get a ton of black, usually college students, sometimes high school students or other young adults coming in, and they all just sit down and attempt to order food. And then the white owners won't serve them, and so they just sit there and wait until they get served. Some of them turn violent, turn gross, turn bad, right? Like in this picture here. These end up working really, really well because the group is the group comes in, they just sit down, they try to order food. The white owners of the restaurant won't serve them food, but they also can't serve anyone else because all the seats are filled. And so the business oftentimes will just shut down for the day, but then the next day a whole new group of students comes in, and again and again and again. They start this up in Greensboro, North Carolina, but it very quickly expands into Tennessee, into Georgia, all across the South. And the sit-ins work really, really well. At this point, remember, segregation is already illegal. And so now all these groups are just trying to, the law's on their side in that way. And so they're trying to get the businesses to recognize laws. Ella Baker is an interesting person because Ella Baker is a leader who kind of stays in the background and stays in the shadows a lot. Um, I'm going to read a quote to you real quick here. You didn't see me on television. You didn't see news stories about me. The kind of role that I tried to play was to pick up pieces or put together pieces out of which I hoped organization might come. My theory is strong people don't need strong leaders. The SNCC is interesting because the SNCC becomes very sectionalized, right? Like each city has its own kind of cell of resistance, where it's these different student groups. And Baker basically just starts traveling from group to group, travels into a city, starts up a group, and then she leaves and starts another group in the next city, leaves. So those are the two big groups. All right, the next big number. Let's go to Little Rock. Okay, the Little Rock Nine. Little Rock, Arkansas. Little Rock, Arkansas. This is 1957. Okay, so this is happening at the same time as the sit-ins, the same time as the SCLC and the SNCC. These are all kind of happening at the same time. So Little Rock 9, this is again school segregation again. The court has ruled that that Little Rock, Arkansas has to allow Black students into their school. And so Black students want to attend Central High School in Little Rock. The governor, Orville Faubus, he refuses to let them in. He refuses to let them in, and then he even goes as far as to use the National Guard to block them and keep them from coming in. Okay. Now, you need to understand what the National Guard is. The National Guard is like the Army Reserves, but where the Army directly responds to the federal government and the president, the National Guard responds to the governor and the state. So there's like a Utah National Guard and an Arkansas National Guard and a Massachusetts National Guard, right? And the National Guard has kind of two jobs. The first job is that the National Guard can be used by the governor in the case of things like natural disasters or relief efforts, or if they have to do vaccines for a global pandemic or something like that. So you'll see that a lot of times, like in Utah, we have like wildfires, and we'll use our National Guard sometimes to help fight wildfires. Or California uses their National Guard for like earthquakes and stuff a lot of times, or hurricanes down in Florida. The National Guard has a secondary duty, and that's to support the Army. And if the Army needs them, then the National Guard gets activated and connected to the big Army, right? So this is where National Guard can be activated and sent to Afghanistan or Iraq, or to fight the Nazis or something, right? Governor Faubus uses the National Guard to prevent Black people from going to school, these Black students from going to school. Now, President Eisenhower is really upset about this because Eisenhower is the Army hero, right? He's the guy who beat the Nazis. And so he doesn't like the Army being used like this, and he tells Faubus not to use the Army like this. Faubus says, I can do what I want, they're my National Guard, which is the wrong thing to say to Eisenhower, who was, the general, the supreme commander of the Allied forces of Europe. And so Eisenhower sends the 101st Airborne Division down to Arkansas with orders to nationalize the Guard. And Faubus says that these guardsmen are going to obey me, right? He says they're going to obey me, the governor. And Eisenhower says that's not how the Army works. And so he nationalizes the National Guard. He nationalizes them so they all become under command of Eisenhower directly, President Eisenhower. And President Eisenhower orders the guardsmen to escort the Black students into the school. For the rest of the year, every day, guardsmen, armed guardsmen in uniforms, escort the Black students into the school. Every day, they walk home with them. They're by their house. They come in, right? They drive. In some cases, the students are walking to school. In some cases, the students drive in the Army Jeep and stuff. But they continue to do this. This becomes a huge deal, right? It's on the news. It's on everything. Governor Faubus gets so upset about this that Governor Faubus's response is to actually shut down the schools the next year. in an attempt to try to avoid this. And that becomes incredibly unpopular. The people of Arkansas are very, very upset. They want their schools to be open. And so he's forced to reopen the schools eventually and to integrate the schools. The next big number, which is related, is Ruby Bridges down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So next big number, Ruby Bridges. We're going to have this school integration, this forced school integration, is going to continue. Eisenhower is going to kind of set this up that any school that doesn't get integrated, he's going to possibly send the army down and force them to integrate. So that's what he does here. Louisiana refuses to let Ruby Bridges attend kindergarten in the white school. And so he thinks the soldiers are going to be too scary. So they send Secret Service men down in their suits. And the Secret Service men come and they escort Ruby into the school. As soon as she starts attending the school, all of the teachers quit. Or all of the families, I'm sorry, all the families start withdrawing their kids from the classes. And the teachers refuse to teach her, and they say that they're going to quit if they're forced to teach her. Barbara Henry is the only woman in the building who's willing to teach Ruby Bridges kindergarten. And so she does. She's originally from Massachusetts, but she had moved down to Louisiana. And so she teaches Ruby, puts Ruby in a class, and then every single student in the class withdraws. So Ruby goes through the entire year by herself with just the one teacher who was willing to teach her. Ruby Bridges and Barbara Henry are still friends. They actually remain close for the rest of their lives, basically. Barbara Henry just died last year, actually. She just passed away this last year, but Ruby Bridges is still alive today. She's only like 60 years old. So in case people tell you that, this is ancient history, you'll hear people oftentimes say that kind of stuff. This is ancient history. Why are we worried about this? This isn't ancient history. Ruby Bridges is alive today. Ruby Bridges just published a book last year. So this isn't ancient. So I think that's a good place to stop. Go ahead and put this in your notes, and I will talk to y'all later. Thanks.